April 6th, 1994. Two elite divers, Jim Bowden and Sheck Exley, take their final breaths of surface air before plunging into the abyss. Their goal? To set a world record by diving into the Zacaton sinkhole, a 1,100-foot deep chasm hidden in the heart of Mexico. But only one of them will return. The Zacaton sinkhole is a monster, over 1,000 feet of darkness, where the pressure alone could crush an unprepared body. It has no currents, no sudden movements, just a silent, inescapable pull toward the unknown. For Bowden and Exley, it was the ultimate challenge, a dive into the void. But this was no ordinary dive. This was a technical, high-risk descent that required years of training, meticulous planning, and nerves of steel. Unlike recreational dives, where divers breathe compressed air, extreme depths require specialized gas mixtures like trimix, heliox, and heliair. The wrong blend of gases at these depths could mean death. The plan was set. Each diver had carefully calculated gas mixtures. Too much oxygen and they risked toxicity. Too little and they risked suffocation. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the environment became. The men suited up, exchanged a final nod, and descended. Though they shared a common goal, they took separate paths. Each man had his own descent line, following different trajectories into the abyss. They would only see each other once during the entire dive, a brief, fleeting moment in the void. At first, everything was smooth. The visibility was surprisingly clear, and their descent lines guided them like lifelines into the deep. At 300 feet, Bowden switched to his heliair mix. His body felt good, controlled. Exley, always methodical, continued downwards, monitoring his gauges, adjusting his breathing, staying focused. As they reached deeper depths, the immense pressure began to affect their bodies. At 500 feet, their voices, had they spoken, would have sounded distorted, as the increased gas density altered the way sound traveled through their masks. At 600 feet, the weight of the water above them was equivalent to dozens of cars stacked upon them. Every movement required effort, every breath had to be measured. At 700 feet, Bowden caught a fleeting glimpse of Exley. The two exchanged a brief look, a silent acknowledgement of the danger they both faced. Then, they disappeared from each other's sight, each man alone in the depths. At 800 feet, the effects of the dive intensified. The increased partial pressure of nitrogen began to take hold, leading to nitrogen narcosis, a condition sometimes referred to as rapture of the deep. It clouded the mind, slowed reflexes, and created an almost dreamlike state. Divers experiencing severe narcosis have been known to hallucinate, remove their regulators, or even swim deeper instead of ascending. Bowden had planned every breath, every second of his descent, but at 900 feet, something was wrong. His gas supply was vanishing faster than expected. He had calculated to have 1,800 psi at this point, but his gauge showed only 1,000. Panic tried to creep in. If he didn't adjust now, he wouldn't have enough air to make it back up. Meanwhile, Exley had surged ahead. At 879 feet, his body started to betray him. His vision blurred. Tremors rippled through his limbs. High-pressure nervous syndrome, HPNS, was setting in. A deadly condition caused by rapid compression at extreme depths. But HPNS was just the beginning. As Exley continued his descent, nitrogen narcosis worsened and CO2 retention compounded the effects. The deeper a diver goes, the harder it becomes to expel carbon dioxide from the body. Excess CO2 leads to a feeling of suffocation, triggering an instinct to breathe faster. But breathing too quickly at these depths only increases CO2 retention, creating a deadly cycle. In his disoriented state, he clung to the descent line, wrapping it around his arm for stability. But that only made things worse. His breathing accelerated. The CO2 buildup in his blood disoriented him. His hands locked up, his thoughts slowed. He was trapped. Bowden had no idea what was happening to Exley. He was fighting his own battle. He inflated his buoyancy control device, stopping his descent at 925 feet. His only option was to switch tanks and begin his desperate climb. Every second mattered. At these depths, decompression stops were crucial. Rising too fast could lead to the bends, deadly nitrogen bubbles forming in the bloodstream, causing excruciating pain, paralysis, or even death. At 450 feet, his worst fear came true. Both of his tanks were empty. His regulator wasn't working. He reached out, hands searching in the blackness, lungs screaming for air. Then, salvation. A decompression bottle. He clamped onto the regulator. Air flooded his lungs. He wasn't safe yet, but he had a chance. Meanwhile, on the surface, the support team was tracking the divers. Then, something alarming. Only one set of bubbles. Where's Exley? panic set in. A rescue diver plunged in, searching for signs of Exley, but at 279 feet, she found something chilling. 2 laminated pages floated in the water, Exley's dive plan. Bowden continued his slow, methodical ascent. When he reached 130 feet, he noticed Exley's descent line. The bottles attached to it were untouched. Maybe Exley had gone deeper, maybe he would surface later, but as hours passed, the truth became undeniable. Exley wasn't coming back. After nearly 10 hours in the water, Bowden broke through the surface. He had survived, but the price of his world record was the life of his friend. 3 days later, the team recovered Exley's body, tangled in the descent line. His dive computer confirmed his final depth, 879 feet. His equipment was functional. His regulator wasn't in his mouth. What happened in those final moments? We may never know for sure. Some believe Exley, realizing he was doomed, secured himself to the line to ensure his body could be recovered. A final act of control, even in death. Others speculate that the combined effects of HPNS, nitrogen narcosis, and CO2 toxicity overwhelmed him, causing him to pass out before he could react. Whatever the case, one thing was certain. Exley had pushed the limits of human endurance, and in doing so, had paid the ultimate price.